you ever been researching a true crime case and discovered that there's just not a whole lot of information out there? Hey everyone, how you doing? My name is Crystal Sky, and welcome to my little series that I call Crime Dip, where I will take a quick look at true crime cases that just don't have a lot of information about them. And that could be for a variety of reasons, right? Maybe the police just didn't release a lot of information, maybe it was a case that was just solved super quickly, or maybe it was a case that the media just didn't pick up. Whatever the reason, I feel like these cases are still worthy of being discussed, especially, if they're unsolved, just because they don't have a Wikipedia page or a Dateline episode dedicated to them. It's true crime in a short amount of time. Today's case is very much like the last case we covered here, where it is still unsolved to this day. And another thing with this case that I was kind of surprised at is I couldn't find any newsreels, because the husband that is involved in this case did several news interviews, and it seemed to be a pretty semi-popular story in the area, but I couldn't find any news clips. So yeah, I don't know if there's a website out there that has archived news footage or something, kind of like how there's newspapers.com and stuff, and they have old newspapers. I wonder if there's a website with old news clips. But anyway, if you are aware of such a website, let me know, because I love incorporating news clips and news interviews and all that kinds of stuff. So with all that said, let's get into today's case. It is the unsolved homicide of Patricia Jauron. And I really hope I'm saying her last name right. I listened to a couple of podcasts to see how they pronounced her name, and everyone just pronounced it Jauron. So I hope that's correct. So let's start with Patricia. We usually start with our victims, right? So let's start with Patricia. So Patricia Ann Kane was born on July 16th, 1952 in Emmitsburg, Iowa. And she was born to Leo Michael Kane and Phyllis Jeanette Gilchrist Kane. Patricia had an older brother named William and 3 other sisters. Their names were Sherry, Ginger, and Therese. Now, Patricia and her family were mainly raised in Cylinder, Iowa, which was a small town of about 112 people. Wow, that is a small town. Cylinder was actually located east of Emmitsburg, where she was born. Now, Patricia would end up attending grade school in Cylinder, but then graduating from Emmitsburg High School. She graduated in 1970 and afterwards attended Iowa Lakes Community College. Now, just 2 years after getting into college, on August 8th, 1972, Patricia married her boyfriend, Gene Jauron, and she became Patricia Jauron, and they were married in North Sioux City, Iowa. And this is where the couple would kind of settle and start their family. Now, according to an obituary, Patricia had a daughter named Annette, along with 2 sons, Jason and Kevin. She would also end up with a granddaughter from her daughter, Annette, and her granddaughter's name was Kayla Simpson. Now, Gene went on to describe his wife as, quote, "She was the life of the party, never see her grumpy, always willing to help everybody." Now, Patricia would end up getting a job with the USDA, and then in 1984, she ended up becoming a librarian, specifically a librarian aide for Sergeant Bluff Middle School. In 1987, she then became the school's secretary, and she would hold that position until 1995. Superintendent of Bluff Luton Schools, Richard Caldwell, described Patricia, quote, "She was an excellent individual and worked well with the kids and the staff." A friend of Patricia's said that she would end up bandaging a lot of knees over the years, and she would deal with problems with students who were sent to the principal's office when the principal was not in. Quote, "She touched the lives of so many kids." Now, Gene worked at Mid-American Energy, where he was a meter reader, and he retired from that job in 1995. And when he retired this year, Patricia decided to retire from that school too, and it was said so her and Gene could travel together. However, she ran and then was elected as a board member on the Sergeant Bluff Luton School Board, and she had that position from 1995 to 1997 when she fully retired. Tom Koenigs, the board president, said of Patricia, quote, "She was an excellent board member, very committed, unselfish, always looking out for the interests of the school and children." And in 1996, so while Patricia is a school board member, unfortunately her father Leo did pass away. Now let's get to the events of the case today. So on Tuesday, May 26th, 1998, shortly before 10 a.m., Patricia, who was only 45 years old, would be found dead. She was found in a rural home that was actually located across the street from the home her and Jean lived in. Apparently, this home that she was found in was actually the home that the family lived in for a very long time. However, at this point in time, her and Jean were trying to actively sell that house, but they were renting it out in the meantime. Jean and Patricia had actually inherited the house across the street from an elderly neighbor, and that's where they were currently living at the time of the events of today's case. They had actually moved into that home approximately 6 months prior. However, the move just across the street required Patricia to actually resign her position as a school board member because she was no longer in the correct district. Moving across the street had actually placed her in the Sioux City district now. I mean, district lines got to start and end somewhere, right? So at 9:52 a.m. that day, authorities responded to a 911 call from Jean about a possible injured person at their old home. Apparently, he had gone across the street to the home when Patricia hadn't returned. Like, she was gone for a pretty long time. It was kind of weird, and so he decided to go investigate. And when he entered the home, some reports stated that he found blood, Patricia's glasses, and eventually her body. Now, later reports, though, said that he just entered the home, found the blood everywhere, and then called 911. And after searching the property, that is when police found Patricia in the front yard of the home. It was one of those yards, it was like a downhill yard, you know, so it was kind of like at the bottom of like a slope of this hill. Woodbury County Sheriff's Chief Deputy Dennis Simmons did not really say a whole lot to the press, only that circumstances led police to suspect that it was a homicide. They also did not tell the press how Patricia had died, who had called 911, and all that the media could pick up on was that investigators were investigating, I guess, like a pickup truck that was parked in the area. And that's pretty much all the public knew at first. The Iowa State Patrol, the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation, and the Woodbury County Medical Examiner's Office would all participate in this investigation. And that same night, Woodbury County Medical Examiner Dr. Thomas Carroll performed the autopsy on Patricia. He determined that Patricia had been stabbed multiple times, and he estimated her time of death somewhere between 9 a.m. and 9:45 a.m. that morning. That night, many of Patricia's friends and family, a lot of the friends included people from the school, all gathered at the crime scene as sort of like a little like makeshift vigil. And one friend of Patricia's said, quote, "It wasn't just anybody who got murdered. She was a wonderful person. The kids liked her." Tom added, quote, "I was shocked. It's a tragic deal, the loss of a good person in a bad way." A cousin of Jean's named Raymond said, quote, "It's a sad thing. The family's all mourning about it." On Thursday, May 28th, police released a little bit more information to the public, including Patricia's cause of death, which, was stabbing, but they offered no further information, such as how many times she was stabbed, the type of knife was used, or if the police had even found the murder weapon. The police would keep quite a lot of information about this case close to the chest. They said that they didn't want to release a whole lot of information to the public just so they could, weed out, like, potential leads, how sometimes police will do that, like they don't want to release certain details and keep details only the killer would know. They did state, however, that Patricia had gone to her former home to meet a prospective buyer. This prospective buyer had answered her swap shop radio ad on KSCG selling a waterbed. Yeah, she was selling a waterbed. Put out this ad on the local news station, and this potential buyer answered her. The police also asked the public for help in identifying a red passenger vehicle. Apparently, this vehicle was seen in the area on the morning of the murder, so they asked the public for any help in identifying it. And from all the newspaper articles I could read, they didn't really, identify the type of, make, model, or anything, just that it was a red passenger vehicle. And I'm wondering if they didn't, put out that information because apparently this area, right, where Patricia and Jean lived, it was a rather rural area, it wasn't like a hubbub of a suburb or something. So maybe that's why. Now, after they had this little press conference where they released this little bit of information, apparently they got a lot of tips. Quote, "We want to stimulate information. That gives you a lot of dead-end roads to go down, but one of them won't be." And this was according to the Woodbury County Sheriff, David Amick. Amick also noted that the mystery person in the red passenger vehicle was just one avenue of investigation that they were pursuing, saying that it was dangerous to only pursue the most, promising leads in a homicide case. Quote, "We're spending every minute of all our time working on this case. We're really pushing our resources to the max on it." And AMIC did announce that they did not think that the public was like in imminent danger. Like they didn't think it was like some, like spree killer, serial killer or something on the loose. He said, quote, "If we did, we would let people know." He also noted that, the public was not at risk, not any more than usual, right? Quote, "We need to take precautions at all times, even though this is the Midwest. As far as the crime rate, we're the best of the best, but that doesn't mean we're immune from having events of this type happen." Patricia's funeral was then held on Saturday, May 30th, and in June, with no breaks or leads in the case, Woodbury County residents started a reward fund. The fund was started by an anonymous couple in Sergeant Bluff, and they started it with $2,000, and it was for anyone who led any information that would lead to an arrest and conviction in Patricia's case. And Pioneer Bank and a local businessman each matched that donation, so the reward fund was at $6,000. On Friday, June 12th, police did announce that they were waiting for forensic test results that they believe would help them, catch the killer, lead them to the killer. They did not elaborate at all on what these tests were, what they had sent to the lab for analysis or anything. AMIC just announced that they were still pursuing leads, but nothing of substance had yet materialized. He was also asked if the police were enlisting the help of like a criminal profiler, and AMIC said that he felt that that was still a ways off. But in the last week of July, authorities had to come out and admit that they were at a dead end. In the beginning of November, that is when the Iowa authorities then enlisted the help of the FBI. Captain Ron Rodfelt of the Woodbury County Sheriff's Department did say that the Sheriff's Office and the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation were still working the case as well. They brought the case before the FBI's National Center for Analysis of Violent Crimes, and this was a division of the FBI that helped investigators with cases that had gone cold, were at a dead end, that kind of thing. However, by November 7th, Captain Ronfeld came out and said that all the information that division kind of gave them wasn't really of any help. He said the review did offer leads, but every lead turned out to be a dead end. The Woodbury County authorities had even put out the details of Patricia's murder to other law enforcement agencies all across the country, to see if there were any other similar crimes or, whatnot, but nothing popped. At this point, the $6,000 reward for any information leading to the killer was still active, and Crime Stoppers had put in an additional $1,000. So it was now at $7,000. But that still did not offer any actual viable leads. On the 1-year anniversary of Patricia's murder, authorities came out and said that they were frustrated and stumped at this case. They were out of leads, out of clues, and they were just flummoxed. In late 1998, they said that they had submitted all the details about Patricia's case to the FBI's Behavioral Sciences Unit in order to develop a criminal profile, but they were still waiting on results, because there were other cases ahead of Patricia's, and developing a profile was an extremely detailed process that took a while. At this point, police came out and they believed that the killer had killed before, but there were no hits on the case by the National Crime Institute, and they said that they would alert local authorities if any similar cases popped up. Quote, "We've exhausted the leads. At this point, we're more or less working on anything anybody might come up with. It's frustrating when you just can't come up with enough to come up with a suspect. We need to keep it in front of the public." It was also revealed publicly that due to the crime scene, the items that they found throughout the house, and how everything was scattered about, and placed, they determined that Patricia's murder was not an act of impulse. It was premeditated. And they also came out and said that they had never found the murder weapon. Quote, "We searched from beyond the county home east up past Memorial Parkway and along the gravel roads and everything. More than likely, the suspect kept it. We were hoping for DNA or for some of the attacker's blood to be found in the residence. There was nothing but hers," and this was according to Captain Ronfeld. He said that there were still some details that they were refusing to divulge to the public, again, in order to weed out false confessions or use them for genuine leads. Quote, "We're hoping the party ends up in jail or prison somewhere and tells another inmate. He can tell us these things that are not common knowledge." He also added, quote, "There's still a reward out and we're still looking for investigative clues. If they've heard anything at all, we'd appreciate a call." A family friend of Patricia's said that they doubted that would ever happen though. Quote, "That's not going to happen. It is my belief that this guy is far from stupid." And so, meanwhile, life goes on. And in May of 2000, Jason, who was one of Patricia and Jean's sons, became engaged to a woman named Tanya Gierk. On the 2-year anniversary of the murder, Gene spoke to the local paper, and he told them that he believed he had actually looked the killer in the face. Quote, "That guy planned this. It was so premeditated. It's unbelievable." He said that a few days before the murder, he and Patricia had a garage sale. And at this garage sale, a man came up and bought a piece of furniture from them, a dresser. But I think he just paid for it and said, "Oh, I'll come back later and pick it up." But he never came back to pick it up. Gene said that during a casual conversation with the man told him that he worked at an area packing plant. And a few days after this garage sale is when the mystery man called from the Jauron's radio ad. Now, this prospective buyer called them from a payphone, and the call was later traced to a payphone near a local convenience store. Gene said that his wife agreed to meet the man's wife at the home across the street from theirs, but he believed it was the man, not his wife, who may or may not have even have existed, that showed up. And he recalled how he felt finding his wife's body. Quote, "I'll never forget how I found her and how helpless I felt. All I could do was hold her." By this time, Woodbury County Sheriff's Deputy Dave Fox was leading the investigation. And unfortunately, he was as stumped as his predecessors as to what could have happened in this case. Quote, "We just don't have anywhere to go with this. We haven't had anybody come forward. It's frustrating." Fox also announced that the FBI had never developed a profile for them. And an FBI spokesman in Des Moines, probably speaking from their Des Moines office, said that the FBI were aware of Patricia's case, but they were not actively investigating it. In the interview, Gene also said that he and his children had tried to get Patricia's case on programs such as America's Most Wanted, but they weren't interested. He said, quote, "It's so weird. Pat and I always were together. We had so many plans. He didn't just kill her, he killed me too." In June 2002, Fox announced that they were going to reanalyze the case, including re-interviewing witnesses, reviewing all the case files, and this was in the hope of turning up maybe new information that they just hadn't thought of before. Quote, "We'll see if there's anything we might have missed. We don't believe we have missed anything. It's just to go over the case with the witnesses to see if they can add any information to getting this crime solved." He did state that he believed the time to solve this case had not run out. Quote, "I think with the right information, time is not going to matter. A good lead could still be developed." And he said it would take investigators about 2 to 3 weeks to re-interview all the witnesses and go through all the case files. And at this point, the $7,000 reward was no longer offered. It had only been offered for a year. Meanwhile, right, life goes on, and Patricia and Gene's other son, Kevin, became engaged to a woman named Bethany Bushel. In 2005, Gene did yet another interview, this time with a local news station, KTIV News Channel 4. And here, he kind of recounted the things that you would expect, right? Details about, him and Patricia's marriage, their relationship, and the day she was murdered. He recounted finding Patricia's body, so I guess he did find her body. Quote, "He'd hit her in the head, knocked her down, and tied her up. She still had the twine on her one arm, but she got loose. He started stabbing. She got out of the basement door, and she got out into the yard, and he must have stabbed her on the way out." And he said that the stabbing was so forceful, quote, "The knife's blade had broken off in Pat's chest." Ugh. Although if the blade had broken off in her chest, I wonder why they couldn't analyze that. Maybe it just, wasn't enough? Because they said they never found the murder weapon, so did they mean maybe they didn't find the handle or something? Or maybe just part of the blade broke off? Gene reiterated about the mystery man at the garage sale, and he stated that there were some clues that he would like a cold case unit to tackle. He also stated that he believed the killer was a local. Quote, "Somebody around here knows. He would have had to have been the most horrible, bloody mess you've ever seen in your life. All I can do is hope they get him." Unfortunately, on Thursday, June 12th, 2012, Gene passed away, with Patricia's murder remaining unsolved. He died at a hospital in Sioux City, and on September 16th, 2015, Phyllis, Patricia's mother, also passed away at the age of 93, again, her daughter's case remaining unsolved. That is always the worst, man, when, family passes away before the case is solved. So that's pretty much all the publicly available information, right, about this case. And so after I combed all the news articles and whatnot, I started to kind of browse Reddit to see, what people had to say about this case. And a lot of Redditors are suspicious of Gene. But I'm a little confused, though, because the initial newspaper reports said that he called 911 at 9:52 a.m., but articles that were about the case, years and years later, said that he called them at 10:52 a.m. So I'm not sure about that discrepancy. There were also Redditors who claimed that there were rumors that a woman Gene dated after Patricia's death was afraid of him. And allegedly after they broke up, he showed up to her workplace with like a bullet-riddled photo of her. Again, these were just rumors with, no way to verify one way or another outside of the ex-girlfriend in question. Gene was also married previously before Patricia to a woman named Yvonne Twin in 1954, and they actually had a son, Gene Francis Buck Jauron Jr., and he was born in 1955, but he had passed away in 1996. And after Patricia, Gene married a woman named Bibi Ghaznabi. I think that's how you say her name. And they were married in October 2005, and she was Gene's current wife when he passed away in 2012. Redditors were also raising an eyebrow at the fact that Gene was apparently 20 years older than Patricia when they got together. But I think one thing that a lot of Redditors neglect to keep in their minds is that times were different and time existed before they were born, and it was in the 1970s, early 1970s, when they got together and got married. And guys, those kinds of relationships were just not really concerning to people. It was more normal than we think, unfortunately. It would be interesting to hear from Bibi or Yvonne and hear what they had to say about Gene. Were they afraid of him? Did he ever exhibit violent behavior towards them? Redditors were also claiming that there were family members of Gene who were suspicious of him. And they were also pointing out that they thought it was weird that this story of the garage sale, right, that Gene had told the papers wasn't initially reported on. But again, the police weren't really forthcoming with any information about the case. So maybe that's why it never came out in news reports until Gene did the interview a couple of years later. I don't know. Because I'm sure the police would tell him, right? Don't tell, the public this or this. We want to keep, these things close to the vest to, weed out the real killer or something. I don't know. A lot of Redditors were also suspicious of, Gene's account of, how Patricia died. But I think they failed to think of a few things. First of all, if he went into the home and saw blood, it would make logical sense that he would probably, follow the blood, right? Because it's going to leave some sort of trail. Right? And so, following that, it would, he would come to conclusions. Secondly, we have no idea what the police had told Gene or what they determined, as they kept so much crucial information to themselves. Thirdly, using forensics, Patricia's body, the positioning, the crime scene, and using analysis and all that, it wouldn't be too difficult for authorities to determine what happened in the moments that led up to her death. You know what I mean? Remember Gene was saying that he thought maybe she was chased through the house or something. Doing crime scene analysis, it would not be difficult for investigators to perhaps come up with that theory. I just really don't know if Gene did it. After all, he spent over 10 years after she was murdered, urging the police to reopen the case. He did numerous interviews with local papers and local news stations and stuff, just trying to get eyes on his wife's case. And if he did it, why would he want the case to continuously be solved and trying to get the police on it, But maybe that's the perfect camouflage. I don't know. What do you guys think? I just thought it was weird that the first suspicions I saw of Gene being a suspect was on Reddit. And if you're on Reddit, you know how Redditors are, especially on the true crime subs. There was nothing I could find in documented sources that said Gene was a suspect, person of interest, or whatever. But that being said, they did keep a lot of the information to themselves. And if they did suspect Gene, they wouldn't come out and say that, right? Although with Gene now being dead, I wonder if they would be willing to come out and say more about if they did suspect Gene. What do you guys think? Do you think he had something to do with Patricia's murder? One user on Reddit claimed to know Jason, one of Patricia and Gene's son in real life, and claimed that Jason was suspicious of his own father. Another thing that people were wondering about, as another angle the case rather than the husband did it, was they wondered if maybe the elderly neighbor who had given the Jaurons the home, did they have maybe some disgruntled family members that were angry that they had given the home to the Jaurons. And if Gene's story is to be believed about the man at the garage sale who said he worked at a packing plant, could the man have probably worked at a meat packing plant where being covered in blood and stuff wouldn't raise any eyebrows? And one last thing I will add, according to a Reddit thread about this case, this was in I believe it was the Unsolved Mysteries subreddit, someone said that Kevin, Patricia and Gene's other son, was arrested in 2008, and he was arrested for some underage occurrence, and that he was also sentenced to 40 years in prison in 2015 for making sadistic child abuse pornography. Yeah. Apparently, he also had 5 victims. I did not delve further into that because A, that's just not the focus of this case. I wanted to focus on Patricia's murder, and B, I really did not want to go down that disgusting hole, so if you want to look that up, go for it. I did see that he commented on an article on iowacoldcases.org, and it was in May of 2022, and there was just a thread, talking about the case, and he just said that he still loved and still missed his mom. And I know, inmates can get internet access, or maybe he's free now. I don't know. I just read that, and I was like, ugh, I don't want to know more about that. I want to focus on Patricia's case. So yeah, what do you guys think about all this? Do you think Gene's a suspect? Do you think this mystery man at the garage sale could be connected to the prospective buyer of the waterbed? I'm curious to know what your guys' theories are. And in a case like this, where there's just not a lot of publicly disclosed information, that's really all you have, right? Is guesses and theories and stuff. I don't know. I don't think Gene did it. Again, why would he continuously be in contact with authorities and wanting the case to be open and doing interviews and stuff, Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, that one Reddit user claimed to know Jason in real life and that Jason was suspicious of his father. Other than asking Jason himself, there's no way to verify that one way or another. Just wanted to add it as, that was just what I came across. So yeah, please leave me your thoughts and theories down below. Next week, we'll be back with a crime dive case. It will be a part 1 of 2. I did part 1 of 2. That's 2. And then in 2 weeks from today, we'll be back with another crime dip case. And until we meet again, hope you take care of yourself out there. Watch out for yourself. And I will either see you next Tuesday or in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.